So would you say the Eurodollar market is now it's a more important pillar for the reserve currency than it was
Yes.
in the 70s?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's part of the reason is because of all the Eurodollar debt, there's all this demand for dollars. And so it keeps a bid under the dollar when there might not be a bid for the yen or the euro or whatever, right? So it kind of keeps the dollar strong versus other currencies. But the other part that happens is that this is where it gets a little tricky, but this is a very, very key part of this, is because it's so much, it creates so much demand for the dollar, then people will say, yes, but if they stop using dollars to sell oil, and if they stop using dollars to do trade, then they don't have to use the dollar anymore. And so then I say, okay, but what are they going to do about their dollar loans? And they say, well, they'll just walk away from them. They'll default on them, and then that'll hurt the US. But here's the thing. That scenario does not hurt the US. That scenario hurts another entity that's outside the United States that loaned those dollars. So in other words, you know, in Turkey owes a lot of money in dollars to European banks. So if Turkey decides they're no longer going to use the dollar and they're going to default on their US dollar loans, they're not defaulting on the United States. They're defaulting on the Spanish bank and the Greek bank and the Italian bank that lent them the money. And when those defaults start happening, you get a credit contraction. And once a credit contraction starts, then it starts a contagion. And that's like what we had in March 2020. In March 2020, there was a contagion and nobody wanted to extend credit. So everybody was searching for the few dollars that existed. And nobody would loan money, and the defaults started happening, and all the money gets sucked up into the dollar, and the dollar goes higher, and the other currencies go lower. That is exactly, and that's exactly what we saw in March 2020. So the problem with going away from the petrodollar is if countries stopped trading oil in dollars, then there's going to be less dollars circulating, right? But all that dollar debt that exists is still going to be there. So it's going to be even harder to service the dollar debt if there's less dollars flowing around.
Yep.
And if they start defaulting on that dollar debt, you start defaulting on other countries, not the United States, and you get a credit contraction where there's even less dollars and funding becomes even harder to get. And so it's really a mess. It's the best way to say it. And there's really no easy way out of it. If there was an easy way out of it, it would have been done a long time ago. And so, you know, we're kind of stuck with it. And that's part of the reason why the dollar standard has lasted so long. This is also why it usually takes some kind of a military conflict for something like this to change, because the pain is so bad to change it willingly. It usually has to get changed unwillingly.
Yeah, and regarding the trade in other currency instead of the US dollar, I've seen some reports saying, well, maybe Russia and China and Saudi Arabia, they will try to have contracts denominated in another currency or price oil in another currency. I don't think that can happen at all. They might pay for oil in another currency, but oil will be priced in dollar because it is the unit of the account of the whole world.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they don't want to use it; the whole world is using it.
Yeah, I mean, you can transact in another currency, but it's gonna settle, you know, or it's gonna be priced off of the dollar. Yeah. So I'm not saying it can never change, but what I'm convinced of is it can't change without a lot of pain. Yep. And a lot of pain, in my opinion, means the dollar goes higher. And when the dollar goes higher, that creates problems all over the world, and it becomes this vicious cycle. And so, you know, I think that the next few years are going to be extremely volatile for everybody involved. And for anybody who's heard me talk about, again, my milkshake theory again, I've said that the U.S. will fare better than the rest of the world. But I want to clarify that doesn't mean that things are going to be good for the U.S. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get hurt. It doesn't mean that we're not going to feel a lot of pain. I just happen to think on a relative basis that we are set up to be okay better than most other places.
And how do you anticipate this pain will manifest itself in the US?
Well, I think we're going to have. We're already seeing the inflationary pressures, right? But I think we're going to have stagflationary pressures. Some countries, some businesses are going to slow down. Others are going to have their input costs rise. So either way, their profits are going to get squeezed. With interest rates low, it'll be harder to finance either real estate or projects. So maybe the growth slows as well. But again, I think this will be happening all over the world. And I think I think what little growth there is going to be in the world, I think it's going to be mainly in the United States.
Yep.